What's happening, guys? Welcome to another review that I've got on the channel this time. As you can see, we're taking a look at the Moza R5 wheelbase bundle. So that includes the wheel itself, the wheelbase, and the pedals as well. And we're going to be talking about why I don't think you should consider getting a gear or belt driven wheel as your starter wheel anymore, especially for the F1 Codemasters games. Now, I do want to mention a few things just before we get into this review. The first thing is I am going to be talking about other games because the wheel does feel different depending on your settings and title of choice that you use. So I will be talking about Assetto Corsa and Assetto Corsa Competizione as well. However, the main thing will be for F1 22 and F1 23, since that's only like a month away from when this review is posted. Next, I will say that Moza has sent this out to me free of charge under the pretext of reviewing this. They don't have any influence over the review itself. They just sent it out so that I can use it for a little bit and then give my review on that. That will not change any of my opinions. Of course, we will be as fair as we possibly can, and I will be talking about things that I don't like about this bundle as well. And lastly, this review is split into many different sections, so you can always check it out by using the player guide down below, and you can check out any part of the review that you personally want to see that will help you decide whether or not this is the wheelbase for you. So without further ado, let's get into my initial thoughts on this wheelbase. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be talking about are my initial thoughts when it came to unboxing the products, when it came to putting it on my rig, and then when it came to actually testing it out for the first time with the default setup. So yeah, when it came to the unboxing, it was pretty fun. It was a good unboxing experience. Everything came well packaged. There was no damage on any of the products. And this wheel, for example, this actually came as a different wheel. It came as a D-shaped wheel. However, they did send me out the formula mod for it, and this is pretty easy to change over. Like when it comes to, you know, DIY and changing things and stuff like that, I'm pretty terrible, if I'm going to be completely honest. However, changing it to the formula mod was very simple. It just literally, you unscrew all of these and then you basically just take it off, and then you put the formula mod on and you screw it back on. Make sure you don't pull out the quick release like I did. I had to reattach that. Luckily, no pins or anything broke in it. But yeah, it's pretty simple to change over, and then yeah, you can get started with the F1 games. Personally, I didn't enjoy the D-shaped wheel just because with my setup, it takes up most of the screen. However, if you're someone who tends to drive, you know, on iRacing, for example, the MX-5 from Mazda or something like that, maybe the D-shaped wheel would probably be a little bit better for you. Even for drifting as well, you could probably get away with it. They do have a wheel that's a little bit more suited for drifting. However, with the D-shaped wheel, you should be okay when it comes to drifting, but in terms of formula driving, I much prefer this. Now, I knew coming into this that the pedals were probably going to be the weak point of the whole bundle, and in my opinion, they are, and that's why I'm still using my Thrustmaster pedals. But the main reason I think they're the weak point is a bit different to probably what you would hear from most people, and it's simply just because I'm used to using load cell pedals. If this is if this Moza wheel pedal set, sorry, is your first ever pedal set, especially with the brake mod, this is probably going to be one of the best experiences you're going to have with a cheap set of pedals compared to anything else. I started out with the Thrustmaster T3PA, which are the plastic pedals from Thrustmaster, and Moza's pedal set is miles above that. So you will definitely have a great experience, including the brake kit as well. You'll have a fantastic experience. However, it's not load cell, and if you've experienced load cell before, the pedal set just isn't good enough to really throw my current pedal set off the rig to put that one on. Personally, I'd probably say that maybe the SRP pedals from Moza are probably more in line with what I'm used to in terms of using my Thrustmaster load cell pedals. However, the pedal set that they sent me with the R5, not really the best for me personally, but again, if you're someone who's never used a pedal set before, you're gonna absolutely love them. Now, when it came to the initial setup with the wheelbase is pretty small. You can see it here on camera. It's not the biggest. In fact, my Thrustmaster TX is way bigger than this. This is a really tiny wheelbase, and because of that, there isn't really any rigs out there that I know of right now that can accommodate the screw pattern of this wheelbase. So what I've had to do is put 2 screws up at the back of the wheelbase, and luckily that's been enough for me. As you can see, I'm pushing and I'm pulling it right now, and you can see it's not moving anywhere. So luckily that was enough. However, if you want even more security, you're probably going to have to drill a hole into your wheel plate, which is not ideal for most people. So yeah, that's definitely not a great thing about this. I mean, even if they had made the wheelbase just a little bit bigger, just so that it can accommodate current rigs, that would have probably been better. But I'm sure they have their reasons for making it as small as it is. So yeah, just personally something I didn't really like, and the fact that I could only screw in two of my screws into the wheelbase, not necessarily ideal, even though as you can see it doesn't really move. So yeah, those were pretty much my initial thoughts on everything, except for when I actually tried it out with the default setting, and I must say this is where it was almost a make or break for me when it came to this wheelbase and what I was actually planning on saying in this review. When I first tried out this wheelbase, the default settings that they give you is not good at all. And I have heard from different sources as well that the Moza wheelbases don't really tend to feel that great out of the box, and I can definitely attest to that. When I first booted up F1 and Assetto Corsa, I played them for about 10-20 minutes each, and after that session I was left feeling like I wanted more. The first thing I thought to myself was, is this it? Is this what direct drives are supposed to be? Because generally it felt way worse than even my Thrustmaster TX belt-driven wheelbase. So I don't know what it is about their default setups. Maybe Moza can look into having a better preset that comes with the wheel out of the box. But personally, I just didn't enjoy it. It felt way too... I don't really know how to describe it because I'm not really a reviewer, but it felt way too stiff, I guess you could say, way too sticky in terms of turning the wheel. There's a lot of friction to it as well, and you just felt things that you realistically shouldn't really be feeling, especially when you're trying to step up from another wheelbase as well. One issue that I had, especially when I initially got this, was when I would turn the wheel, I would feel the force feedback when I was on a straight. I'd feel all the detail on the road and everything like that. But as soon as I started turning into a corner, I couldn't feel any of that detail or anything like that. And it really confused me in terms of why that was happening, because on my Thrustmaster I felt all of those details, even though it was supposed to be a worse wheelbase in theory. So yeah, I did end up figuring a solution out to that, and that was just within the pit house settings. I will be linking that in the description and the pinned comment as well, so make sure to check that out, guys, just in case you get this wheelbase and you are left feeling exactly what I felt on the initial stage, thinking, is this really it? Is this what direct drive wheels are supposed to be? So yeah, that's my initial thoughts when it came to everything from unboxing the wheel to actually using it for the very first time. Now I'm going to be talking about each thing a little bit more in depth. I do have some notes on my screen right here, so if you do see me looking over here, I'm just looking at my notes. So yeah, let's get straight into the wheelbase in particular, because that's the main thing that you guys are probably here for. So I'm actually glad that I researched this, because I was actually wrong in terms of the max Newton meter output. It's actually a 5.5 Newton meter peak torque wheelbase and not just a 5 Newton meter. Obviously 0.5 isn't a lot, but obviously I was wrong in that assumption. So yeah, it's a small but pretty powerful wheelbase actually, and I'm moving from the Thrustmaster TX, and I was using that for the last 3.5 years, so I've had a lot of experience with the Thrustmaster TX, and that was, I believe, a 3.9 Newton meter peak torque. So yeah, for me it was an upgrade, and for some people it might be a downgrade, but for me it was an upgrade in peak torque. And I've got to say, the peak torque wasn't even the start of the show when it came to this wheelbase. Once I had dialed in the settings, it was the detail and the smoothness of this wheelbase that really stole the show to me. Before I even turned this wheelbase on, I was literally just sitting there spinning it around for like 20 minutes straight, just constantly. I was just so in shock with how smooth the wheelbase felt even when it was powered off, because with the Thrustmaster TX, even when it's powered off, you can still feel the notches, you can still feel each individual, gear, and obviously you can still feel the belt itself when you're turning the wheel. So the fact that it was so smooth just completely bamboozled me, to be honest. And I was enjoying it, especially when I dialed in those settings as well, and I started to feel that smoothness even whilst I was driving as well. And if you've never used any sort of wheelbase before, if you're new to sim racing and you don't understand what direct drive wheelbases are, what belt driven wheelbases are, direct drives are usually seen as the best of the best. And the main reason for that is because the wheel is connected to the motor directly, hence the name direct drive. Whereas with belt driven wheelbases, there is a belt that helps increase the strength of the force that the motor gives. Typically they'll use smaller motors, and then they'll use, either gears or belts to help increase the force that is produced in the wheelbase and help increase what you feel as you're driving. And with the belts, I'm assuming, I'm not an expert when it comes to this, but I'm assuming the belts do dampen the detail and the vibrations a little bit, just due to the nature of how they're constructed. Whereas with a direct drive wheel, you are feeling all of those forces because you're connected directly to the motor itself. So what I've done is I've already recorded myself going through the Moza Pithouse software, just talking about what I think each setting means and why I've chosen a certain percentage for those settings. And then we'll come back to this recording format where we'll talk more about the steering wheel and the pedals. So here we go, guys. This is the Moza Pithouse software. And I mean, if you've ever used anything from Thrustmaster, you can already tell how massive of a jump this is in terms of levels compared to Thrustmaster's software and what they provide. It's basically nothing compared to this. But anyways, this is a homepage, so obviously you can see the steering wheel and you can see the wheelbase and the pedals. Those are obviously the main products that Moza sell. Obviously, we've not got the pedals connected. That's why the signal is lost and the pedals are disconnected. But we will still go over to that page so I can talk to you a little bit more about this very, very soon. So anyways, let's go straight to the wheelbase, as that's the most important one. You can see it here. You get this setting. You can go to more, or you can click down into this. Now, these are the exact same settings that I use for F122. I did get help when it came to the baseline of this. So shout outs to Infratic for giving me at least a baseline that I could sort of work with. And yeah, pretty much I've came up with these settings. Half of them, I still don't really know what they mean like this. I can't really give you any recommendations on this or the curve, just because I don't really know too much about them. However, I'm pretty sure there will be videos on YouTube that you can find more about this on, but I'll mainly be talking about the basic, the advanced, and the miscellaneous settings, and then we can move on to the steering wheel and what the pedals do as well. So yeah, for the basic settings, you pretty much just get your maximum steering angle. Roll sensitivity, that's just basically how much detail you're going to be feeling in the wheelbase. You want to go with 10 with that, and obviously it's personal preference depending on what car you're driving for the maximum steering angle. For the game intensity, you want to put this at 100% with the R5. If you do have another wheelbase that's a little bit more powerful, like the R16 or the R21, you probably won't have it at 100%. So yeah, with the R9, maybe in the R5, probably want it around about 100%. Now the maximum speed, wheel speed, that's simply just how fast the wheel can turn. So if I was to turn this up to the maximum 200%, this is basically the quickest that it will turn. And this is obviously whilst you're in the game driving. I've got it set to somewhere around, I think I had it set to like 60% or something like that. That's mainly so it can help catch slides on the game. And obviously the rear ends is really loose on F1 because you really want a lot of oversteer to get the most amount of time. You can get a lot of oversteers, and I feel like this is just a little bit easier for me to catch those slides. Usually you probably would want to have it a little bit lower for Formula cars, a little bit higher for GT cars, and then if you're drifting or something like that, you probably want to turn it up to maybe 100% or something like that. The wheel spring strength. Now, I didn't know what this was for a long time, but I figured it out now. And what this is how much the car will fight you, or how much the wheel, sorry, will fight you to get back to the center once you've turned it. So you can see right now we've got it at 0%. Nothing happens when I turn the wheel to the maximum rotation. However, if I turn this setting to 100% and I turn it to the maximum rotation now, you can see it moves straight back to the center. And it doesn't matter how much you turn it, it just wants to return back to the center. And that's what that setting does. I personally don't like this, and I don't know why you would have this, but it's there anyway. So at least there's that. Maybe you would want that for drifting. Maybe that's a lot better for drifting. I don't know. But for Formula 1 and that type of stuff, yeah, just turn it off. Wheel dampening, fairly self-explanatory here. It's just, how much damping do you want on the wheel? I don't really know what's a good setting for this one. Some people, I think, have it at 0. they just don't have any dampening on the wheel. I probably will try it at 0 actually, and see for myself, and then maybe I can update you guys when I do my F123 wheel settings. Well, no, I don't know at this moment of time. I felt like 40 felt all right, and it felt like the wheel was a little bit stronger, which I tend to like. So, yeah, that's why I've gone with 40%. And then the advanced settings, this is where you can get a little bit more fine tuning, and then the force feedback equalizer. That's where you can really get some fine tuning. Now the maximum output, maximum output torque limit, I've got that to 100%. I keep both of those on 100% just so that the wheel base is putting out as much as it can, and then I will manipulate these settings in the game to really fine tune that and make sure that we don't get any clipping in the game. And then you've got the inertia. I think that's when you let go of the steering wheel and then it goes all violent and stuff like that. I don't actually know how to fix that, to be honest with you guys. So I think I've just left it at the default, to be honest. But if you guys know, if any of you are watching this video and you ended up figuring out after this, maybe you could let me know. I'm not entirely sure. And then the wheel friction, again, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's just how much friction you get. The more percentage you put on, then the more friction you'll get. This is mainly, well, for me anyway, from what I understand, this is mainly for me just precision-wise, just having that friction there, so that just so you can feel the wheel fighting against you. I don't actually know when it comes to this one. I was a little bit confused. But if we check the tooltip, yeah, it says it just simulates the friction effect independent of the game output. So I'm assuming that's when the car is turning, and obviously you can feel that friction with the tires. Doesn't really translate well to F1, I don't think, but for AC you can really feel it. And then you've got the speed dependent dampening. This is obviously just dampening depending on how fast you're going. I like to boost this a little bit. Some people like to keep it at 0. I might do a little bit more testing with the 0 and see how that feels. But for now, this is what I've got it at personally. Now this, I'm still very confused about, but it is basically just fine-tuning your force feedback. You can literally fine-tune it to different signals, so low frequency signals and high frequency signals. This is the settings that I got from Infratic. Seems to work fairly well, but you can fine tune it so that if you want to feel more effects on the curbs when you're going at 80 kilometers an hour, you can do that. So yes, it's really up to you. And again, you can probably find more details about this, but this is just what I've got. We'll skip over the curve because I've literally just got a linear line, and then miscellaneous. This is the soft limit stiffness. This is basically when you get to the maximum rotation, how soft is the limit going to feel to you? I like it. At first, I used to like it really towards the maximum end there, where it was a really hard stop. But actually, since then, I've actually preferred the sort of softer feel. It feels quite nice. And then the temperature control, I've got it at radical. To be honest with you, even at radical, I still haven't experienced the wheelbase being hotter than what the Thrustmaster gets. So it's really good at cooling. So that's really good. Now for the wheel steering settings, this is where you can. I don't think you can actually change. I don't think you can actually change your button layout here, but you can just check to see if the buttons are actually working here. So that's, I guess, fairly convenient, just to make sure that the buttons are actually registering. And then you've got the steering light as well, so you can really just fine tune that. You can turn it off, you can keep it on. I keep it on, but to be honest, I still look at the in-game indicator. So to be honest, I probably should just turn it off and leave it. But for now, I like seeing the lights move every so often. So you probably want to have that on. And what you can really do is you can fine tune how much of a percentage it will go when you reach that. That's when the steering lights will start indicating for you to shift up and down. And then for the pedals, now obviously I've not got them connected, so I can't actually show you the fine-tuned details, but you can actually change you can change how the game registers each input depending on what you've got here. So you've got a few different options and you can fine tune them yourself. So you've got the regular linear pattern, and that just means the more you press down, the higher percentage the game will register for your throttle, your brake, and your clutch. However, you can change it to a curve. You can change it to an S curve so that it's lower at the bottom, but then higher at the top. You can have it you can have it as an S curve so that it goes quickly in the middle, but then at the top and bottom is slowing down. And then you have these type of curves where, as I said before, you can have it so that it's low at the bottom, high at the top, or high at the top and low at the bottom. And you can do that for each one of these, really. And then you can set the pressure point for the brake as well, which again is pretty good in terms of making it feel like a load cell, but it isn't a load cell. So, you know, no matter what you do to it, it's not going to give you the exact same as what a load cell can give you. And that's why I recommend getting better pedals as soon as you possibly can. Now, the Moza software, Pit House software does have other things as well, but to be honest with you, at the moment, most of these things don't really matter to me, so I'm not going to talk about them in this section here. But you do have this section where you can update all of your stuff. You've also got a one-click to upgrade all, which is very, very convenient. I do like that. And then you've got, you know, some of the more advanced settings where you can, you know, recover the wheelbase if something goes wrong. You can, you know, set some settings in Pit House, and then you can test out some experimental functions if you want to as well. So that's pretty much the Pit House software in full. So yeah, let's head back to the main review. Okay, to be honest with you, when it comes to the ES wheel, I will take this off, which I will mention, this quick release is fantastic, by the way. But when it comes to the steering wheel itself, there's not really much to talk about. This is Moza's cheapest wheel that they do offer, and I have combined it with their Formula mod, of course. And yeah, comparing it to the TM Open Wheel, which is what I had before, there's not really that much of a difference. They're both pretty thin in terms of the actual I'm guessing the metal that was used here, and the buttons are pretty basic as well. There are more buttons on this than there are the TM Open Wheel, which I personally do like because I want to have certain buttons mapped to certain things in the game. However, it's pretty basic. You know, if you're comparing this to even Moza's own products, like the FSR wheel, like the GSV2 or anything like that, and if you compare it to stuff like Fanatec, obviously they have a lot more buttons at a higher quality than what you're going to receive here. So you are getting what you pay for when it comes to this. However, this is still a very solid choice. And to be honest, in terms of Formula One, I could argue that even at the higher end of the wheelbases, you could probably get away with using something like this. So to be honest, when it comes to your setup, the steering wheel is probably the thing that you're going to be spending the money on just for pleasure rather than actual function, for the most part, once you get past a certain level. The thing that you're probably going to be paying more attention to in terms of being quicker are your pedals, then your wheelbase, and then the steering wheel itself. So yeah, not really much to say about this other than for its price, it's very good. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the pedals now as well. I do have the pedals in its box over there at the time of recording this, but I will have some B-roll rolling over this footage showing you guys the pedals as well whilst we talk about this. So Moza sent me out all three pedals in the set. They sent me the throttle and the brake, of course, and I was also given the clutch as well. I don't really need a clutch just because of the type of games that I tend to play, but for those of you who will need a clutch, it's a pretty standard clutch, to be honest. Even compared to some of the basic ones, you know, it's literally just you press the clutch in and you pull it back up, and there's not really much else to it. It's not a two-stage clutch or anything like that. The brake pedal, it's actually a bit, the initial brake pedal was a bit stiffer than I thought it would be initially, so that's very good. However, when it comes to the brake pedals, you really need to have as stiff of a brake pedal as possible, just so that you can be consistent when it comes to your braking points and when it comes to trail braking as well. So I would personally say, if you're going to get something like this, definitely get the brake kit. It does help, but it doesn't make it a load cell. That's the only issue, of course, which means that no matter what you do with that pedal set, it's just not going to be as good as a load cell pedal. However, it is pretty darn close, and it's probably the pedal set that is the closest to load cell pedals out of all of the starter pedals, I guess you can call them, especially from what I've used as well. I've tested out the Logitech one like once or twice, and I had used the T3PA pedals for about a year and a half before I upgraded to the load cell pedals. And yeah, compared to those, this pedal set blows those out of the water. But for most of us who are already using load cells, don't get this, because to be honest, you're just not going to enjoy it at all. Now, the throttle pedal was probably my favorite pedal out of all three, just because obviously the brake personally don't like it as much just because I'm used to something a bit more stiffer, and I'm used to having to actually use force to apply my brake instead of the distance traveled. And the throttle pedal was pretty good because it was a lot stiffer than the one that I currently use, which I actually enjoyed. My only issue was with the way that I've got my rig set up. It hurt my feet quite a lot to use those pedals because they're at an angle quite a bit, whereas my current pedals, I sit in a more formula style position, so they're a lot more flat faced, and that helps me personally when it comes to using the throttle and using the brake. So yeah, there's a few things about this bundle that I don't like. There's quite a lot that I do like as well. I have talked about Pit House in this video, and I have shown you guys my settings and how I went about changing the settings, asking different people about the settings. And I personally think that the Pit House and the quick release are probably my two favorite parts of this entire bundle. The Pit House just gives you so many different options when it comes to how this wheelbase will end up feeling when you actually start driving, and then the quick release is just miles better than anything I've ever used personally. So they're definitely the highlights for me. But in terms of using this wheelbase on games at this price point, I believe the whole bundle is around about £500, roughly around that area. I can't see why people would end up wanting to get belt driven or even gear driven wheelbases anymore. I personally would highly recommend just saving up that little bit of extra money if possible and just going with this, because if you go with the other ones, you're going to want to upgrade to something like this eventually anyway, so you might as well just skip that process. If you're serious about sim racing, then you should definitely go with something like this, because you're not going to regret it. The only thing that you're probably going to be missing from a wheelbase like this is just the extra strength. That is it. And even then, you know, this wheelbase can still pack out a lot of force, so you know, you're not going to be missing too much. Your average person probably not going to miss too much from this. However, the main things I don't like, one thing I actually didn't remember to mention in the wheel section, is the hand grips. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the hand grips, just because when you start sweating, as you've been racing for quite a long time, the material that they've used for this is pretty rough. It's not squishy or anything like that. It doesn't have any holes in there to help out with your hands when they're sweating. And it means that when I'm sweating and I'm turning the wheel, I find that my hands tend to slide down the wheel or slide up, depending on what way I'm turning or whatever. They tend to just slide around, and it can be very hard to control the car when, you know, your hands are literally sliding down the wheel as you're turning around a tight hairpin or something like that. Another thing I forgot to mention when I was recording that little session there is the hand grips as well, due to the fact that they are pretty rough and they're not squishy, as I mentioned, or anything like that. When I've been using them for a while, my hands tend to hurt quite a lot. Now, I do have some issues with my hands anyway. However, I've never really experienced the pain after a long race from using the TM open wheel compared to this, just because the materials that they used on the Thrustmaster wheel was a lot softer, and obviously it had the Alcantara on there as well. So that's another issue as well. If your hands tend to hurt quite easily like mine, maybe that might be an issue with this wheel as well. So that's definitely one issue. I mean, obviously it can be fixed with gloves, but I personally don't like wearing gloves as much anymore when it comes to these wheelbases, just because I've had a pretty bad experience with gloves up until this point. So yeah, that's just the way I drive, and personally it can hinder my driving sometimes. So that's definitely something I don't like about that. The wheelbase, I don't like how it comes out the box. Personally, I feel like it's enough to even turn some people away from this wheelbase, just simply from the fact that the settings are just so weird. I'm not sure how they came up with those settings, but yeah, personally, I just don't like the way the wheelbase felt when I got it out of the box. And then the pedals, though they are fantastic in terms of their price point and what they're competing against, from what I've used and from what many other sim racers have used in terms of load cell and even hydraulic, they just don't stand up to what other people have used. But if you are coming into this as a newbie and these are the first pedal sets you're gonna get, you're gonna enjoy them. It's just as simple as that. The only thing that you're probably gonna want to upgrade later on is, you know, having that brake pedal be load cell or even hydraulic. Now, F123, which is the main games that I will be playing on my channel, comes out in about a month or so from when this review is posted. And if you're, you know, a part of this channel as a regular viewer, and you play F1 quite a lot yourself, this is definitely a bundle that you should be looking at in terms of, the next game, because you're going to be a lot more consistent on the game just because you can feel more of that detail. The smoothness as well really helps with that, and the force even helps with that as well. There's situations that I've been in my racing where if I had my Thrustmaster TX, I wouldn't have had as much confidence to get out of that situation. Whereas with this, I've had enough confidence to get out of that situation pretty comfortably and even turn those bad moments into good moments as well. So yeah, this wheelbase can really help you with your consistency, and combined with a good pedal set, which, even though for me personally, I don't think the R5 pedal set is really amazing compared to what I've already used. If you've never used a pedal set before, these could probably give you the confidence you need to get to a pretty high level in the game. Pit House can be pretty confusing at first, but once you get used to it, it's fairly simple as a software, and the flexibility that it gives you compared to anything that I've used before is absolutely insane. This is someone coming from Thrustmaster software, which if you use the Thrustmaster software before, you know where I'm coming from here. It's very, very basic, and compared to Pit House, you basically have zero options. I mean, the amount of things that you can tweak with this to get it to your liking is incredible. So yeah, Pit House is probably the highest rated thing for me when it comes to this whole bundle. You're definitely going to enjoy it if you do get this. And in terms of the steering wheel itself, obviously Moza offer a lot more higher quality steering wheels, but if you're just getting started, with something like this, honestly, this is more than enough. You're not really going to need anything much more than this. So I hope that this review was able to help you guys make a decision on whether or not you're going to step up to, the sort of cheaper end of the rec drive wheel. If it's with Moza, if it's with someone else, then fair enough. Yeah, personally, I think that this bundle is a pretty good deal for most people. You get everything that you need right off the bat, and you get a wheelbase that is just going to be miles ahead of any of its belt and gear driven counterparts. I would like to thank Moza for sending this out to review. I will have links in the description to all the products that they've sent out for this review. None of them are affiliate links or anything like that. I don't think they even do that sort of thing anyway. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't know. But yeah, just click through if you want to go and buy those. Other than that, yeah, that's pretty much been it for this review. Make sure to like the video, make sure to comment with your experience if you do have this wheelbase. If you do get it and you need some help, make sure to join the Discord, which will be in the description as well, and I can always help you out as much as I can. And hopefully you'll see another review from me very, very soon.